What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Wing and Tail Boys podcast, your Northeast hunting and fishing destination. I'm Chris,
And I'm Angelo.
and we're your hosts. Join us as we navigate the woods and waters of the Northeast, sharing our passion for the outdoors.
Whether it's land management, outdoor recreation, hunting, or fishing, we're going to cover it all. With 40 plus years of experience in the Northeast, we'll provide insights, tips, and stories to help you make the most of your adventures and help you experience the wild.
So, tune in, grab your gear, and let's hit the woods together. And always remember, success is just a commitment away.
What's up, everybody? How you guys doing? This is another episode of the Wing and Tail Boys podcast. I'm Angelo.
And I'm Chris.
And we're going to be talking today about the episode that we had last week with Brian Melvin, who shot what would have been the world record black bear. I thought it was a really cool conversation, and I think we just gave him a lot of chance to talk to us about what his experiences were, and we wanted to give the audience a chance to get to know him and a little bit about his story, but we didn't really react too much to that video. So we're just going to do a quick recap of what we thought about that conversation, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some pre-rut strategies that we have coming up here as we close out October and head into November. And we'll talk about a couple things that have happened to us in the past week. So, Chris, why don't you tell us what you kind of thought about the conversation that we had with Brian?
I mean, first off, anytime you hear of any type of record, a state record, a world record, whether it's something as small as a fish, world record bass or whatever, or something as big as a bear, I think you have to pause and just appreciate it for a moment. And I think we had that opportunity to do that, having him on the podcast, being face to face. I mean, really screen to screen, right? But being able to be face to face and just hear that raw emotion coming from him, and just to see the smile on his face and the glow in his eyes, just like how excited he was recalling. And to go back to what we talked about a few episodes ago, where the trophy of the hunt isn't the trophy on the wall. It's the memories and the emotions and everything that came from the beginning of that journey to the end of that journey. So just having that opportunity to sit with him and talk to him was really awesome. I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, I had a great time too. He seemed like a really great guy. The one thing that kind of stuck out to me about his whole story was when he was talking to the guys that he was hunting with in his hunting group, and they were talking about how they needed to get to the weigh station to weigh the bear. His first gut reaction was to field dress the animal, knowing that the meat was going to spoil. And I guess in the world of bear hunting, if you're thinking that you have a world record animal, you're told not to field dress the animal to get a live weight. And him knowing that, he was chasing this animal and he did his due diligence. He knew what the protocol was. He knew that if he harvested this animal, that might be a decision he'd have to make. And it sounds like he didn't waste any time in making the decision to field dress the animal, knowing that that would be something that would happen, is that the meat would spoil and he would not be able to um, benefit from his harvest. And it sounds like it might be to his detriment. It sounds like they're thinking about holding him out of the record books as far as the world record black bear, which I think even if they do some deductions, he might even still qualify for.
I
So
mean, he
we'll have to
has.
wait and see what happens with that. But I mean, as far as you talk about his character, I mean, that was just one thing that really stuck out to me and something I really appreciated was that he's not in it, even though he knew it was going to be a trophy. He wasn't in it for the recognition. He was in it because he wanted to pursue the animal for the right reasons. He pursued the animal to be able to provide for himself, and I commend him on that.
Sure. No, I agree with you there. And he doesn't seem to really care about the record. I think he has embraced it and he's accepted it, and he's enjoying most of the stuff that's happening after the fact. Not everything, unfortunately. We did talk to him about some of those negative outcomes that have come with the harvest of the bear, but we kind of talked to him about that off camera, and I want to respect his privacy and not really, touch on that here. Just know that unfortunately, with all of that success, has come some stress and some issues for him, which is really unfortunate. But speaking about the record as a whole, I mean, he was 9.5 pounds away. The world record black bear, ungutted, on the hoof or on the foot, however you say it
Live
with a
weight.
bear.
Live weight.
with live weight, 780 pounds. His bear gut and brought to the
Estimated.
butcher,
Oh yeah,
770.5
yeah,
pounds.
exactly. So he was nine
So
and a half
he's
pounds
nine and a half
away from
pounds
the world
off of the
record
world
field
record
dressed.
live field
Yes.
dressed.
Hmm.
So I think if the state and the world record committee or whatever really sits down and views this, I know he doesn't care about the world record. We know that from our conversation with him, but I think it would be I think it would be really classy if the world record committee could say, we can't put an exact weight on it, but we know for sure that the guts would have been more than 9.5 pounds.
I mean, without
You
a
know,
shadow of a doubt.
yeah. I mean, the gallbladder alone weighs 10 pounds.
The
So
blood probably lost while he was expiring
yeah,
probably would have been the 7 pounds.
yeah. So like, it would be really classy for them to say, we know you have the world record. We're going to give it to you. We just can't put a number on it. Which I kind of understand also where the issue comes in,
And
because
he was
when you're
willing to
talking about,
negotiate for the percentage
yeah,
deduction as well. He said, normally they give an 18% calculated difference from live weight to dressed weight. He said he would settle for
take
half.
10. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
he
think
didn't even care. I
I
mean,
think
he was,
he said something like 15% is what they normally give you. He's like, I'll take 10%. How about
yeah,
that?
take
So
and still be happy with it.
whatever the case is, I think anyone who's a hunter knows in their heart that he has the world record. That's why the title we put on our last podcast has world record in it. We know he has it. We also, like I said 3 times already, we know he doesn't care, but the recognition is there, and just we just want to be honest. Now, some of those things, one of the things I really liked, that was really cool, that is opposite from us, is that he didn't come from a hunting family. He was taken under the wing of a mentor that he had, an old boss that he had, and he took him out bird hunting, and he was hooked from that moment on. So we can kind of relate to that. That's kind of how we cut our teeth in the woods. We started out bird hunting, but we were raised in a hunting family. We knew hunting from the moment we could even come up with our own opinion or have our own thought. So it was really cool to see that two people coming from, or two of us and him coming from two different ends of the spectrum and kind of meeting in the middle. And I would even probably go as far as to say I think he's a little bit more, you know, how do I put it? He's a hard hunter, man. Like, he's going out, getting in the thick of it. He's hunting mature deer only. So that's kind of like where I've decided to try to go, the direction I've tried to go in this year. But it was really cool to hear how we came from different ends of the spectrum, but started on the same thing, and we're kind of somewhat in the same place in the middle of our journey now. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like he has a lot in common with us, and I'm sure he has a lot in common with a lot of other people who enjoy the outdoors and enjoy hunting. And it was refreshing to hear his story. I was also pleased to know that there's at least one other person, and hopefully he'll inspire more to come from non-hunting backgrounds and start to enjoy the sport of hunting and fishing. I mean, it's my opinion that these resources are here. They're for us to be able to provide for ourselves and help us to be a little bit more self-reliant. For a lot of people, they say, I don't know if I could be a hunter, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. Um, but for all of us meat eaters out there, I mean, if you have the opportunity to go out there and harvest your own meat that you could bring to your table, and you know where it came from, and you know the quality of it, where it's been eating, where it's been drinking, and you know that there's not been any mishandling or any hormones added or whatever else you may want to say. But those are things that I'm proud to put on my plate at the end of the day, and I'm happy that I'm able to go out and get those things for myself. One of the things I'll say about this Brian story, though, is the bear scene seems to be a little odd to me because there we know that baiting is not a controversial thing. People bait, you know what I mean? And some states allow it, some states don't. Some certain areas allow it, and some others don't. Um, I mean, you could probably put piles and piles and piles of bait out there, and you're probably not going to affect the weight of an animal. Specifically, though, when it comes to the bear baiting, it seems to be a lot of artificially flavored, a lot of sweets, sugar, stuff like that that would make anything gain weight, right? So, like when you talk about baiting deer, you're talking about corn or apples or pumpkins or something like that. A lot of that's probably healthy by itself. When you're talking about baiting bear, you're talking about donuts and candy and cake and all these other things. I I'm not taking anything away from his trophy. I'm wondering though that through the years, and we know that his chase on this animal was a multi-year chase, through all the different people that were chasing after this bear, through all the different landowners and property that this bear traveled through, how many bait piles it was subjected to,
How much red dye 40
how
has he
you know,
eaten?
how much has it affected it? No, I just
Yeah, yeah.
I was thinking
I
about
was
it.
being silly.
How much has the baiting aspect of chasing specifically this bear that they knew already was probably a world record bear 2, 3 years ago? How much more did that actually add to it? And is that something that is going to maybe enhance the record books when it comes to trophy bears, knowing that now people have these abilities to, put these big bait piles out there. And a long time ago, people probably were not doing that. I mean, I'm not saying they weren't baiting, but a lot of
Yeah,
times, what people did was, you hear the old adage when you talk about, people who are living off grid, they would take maybe a deer carcass that they harvested, put it out in the woods as bait, and then hunt a bear. Like that
sure.
would be like kind of what you would think.
Yeah,
Uh,
or the gut pile or
yeah, gut
something.
piles, stuff
And
like that.
now, kind of the other side of that. That's a really interesting point you brought up. I never even thought of that. The other side of that though is like we as humans, we're gluttonous. We find something we like and we just don't stop eating it. Like the Pringles slogan, once you pop the fun don't stop. It's not that you're having fun eating the damn Pringles, it's that they're so damn addicting you can't stop eating them till the freaking tube is done. You know? Animals on the other hand, they eat to necessity. As far, and I'm not a biologist, so I could be wrong here. But
Well,
like I feel like a
I
deer is going to
just
eat as much as he needs to.
before we go through to the next point that you're gonna make, a lot of animals though will eat knowing that they might not have a chance to eat
Might
again.
not have a chance to eat
I
again.
think that there's
Yeah,
actually some animals that don't even actually have appetites. Like they just take advantage of the situation.
maybe.
So
I know
I'm sure
snakes
that
could
they
go like
feel
weeks without
hunger.
eating.
I'm sure that they feel hunger. But I think like if I'm not mistaken, and this is just me being a nerd for, nature documentaries. I think if I'm not mistaken that there's certain frogs that they do not have appetites. It's just they just eat anything that they see and they can gorge themselves.
Yeah,
So, some humans do that too. You know what I
sure.
mean?
Yeah,
And a
and
lot of it has to do with, in the human aspect, has to do with food with very low nutritional value, which is
yeah,
why being someone who hunts for and is able to sustain yourself with the animals that you harvest, good, hearty, nutritious meals will keep you full and keep you eating less.
yeah. No, for sure. So that was pretty much it. It was just it'd be curious to know if any biologists are listening to this. It'd be kind of cool if you could leave a comment down below. Like, do animals just eat to eat? Do they eat for
Pleasure.
necessity? Yeah, like what's the deal here? The people want to know.
Yeah.
um, something else that was really cool, kind of something that we've heard about. We've kind of talked about it before on the podcast, but hearing it from someone who's been through it, been through the ringer, went through the struggles, started finding success. One of the big things he talked about too was that when he started making the decision to specifically target more mature deer, he started to see significantly less deer. We've heard it a bunch of
And
times
bear
in
for that
other
matter, he said.
and
I mean,
bear.
obviously when you're hunting over
Yeah,
bait, he said the small bears come in. But as far as the sightings of animals that you want to harvest go down
yeah.
significantly.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty interesting. We've heard from other big guys, podcasts that we've listened to, other content that we've consumed, but to get someone to come in who hunts the same woods that we do, from the same region that we are, to say the same thing, I thought that was pretty cool. And really, the last thing, and the thing that I'm probably most excited about, was during that conversation, we talked to Brian about his dog training of waterfowl dogs, and I very briefly touched on Hunter and my pointing dog, and we kind of toyed with the idea of getting into like a dog training, like a hunting dog training series on YouTube and on our podcast channel. So I'm really excited to kind of pick his brain on that and see if maybe we could get something working out of that, and do a waterfowl dog segment and an upland bird dog segment, maybe a blood tracking dog segment. I think stuff like that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, all that stuff sounds great. I mean, we're looking to give as much content for all the different types of avenues of the outdoor recreation as possible. So, if anybody's out there listening and they have some hobby that they have that they see as being underrepresented, just let us know. And, I'm sure that we do it. Obviously, there's a time and a place for everything. Right now, we're about to be getting into the rut, and the pre-rut's basically around the corner. That's going to basically be what we segue into right now. So we're focusing on white-tailed deer, but, migratory bird season is upon us, right? That's going to be something that we're going to be looking to kind of step away and maybe go and try to get a hunt or two in on. Um, in New Jersey, we have a stocked upland bird season that's right around the corner as well. That's going to be something that once the season starts, we're going to be dabbling in. And then, fall turkey possibly, maybe a bear hunt. We're going to be hunting the rifle season in New York coming up in November 16th, and then the following week in Pennsylvania. We get a deer and a bear tag in, I think, both of those states, right? Both of those states or just New York?
Pennsylvania and New York, you get tags. I think one of the states, I forget off the top of my head, one of the states you have to buy you have to buy a bear tag. The other state it comes
Yeah,
with
so
your
New
tag.
York, it comes with it.
So I think
So
it's
for
I
me, I got
think
the
don't quote
out-of-state
me on that.
license last week, and it came with a bear tag and a deer tag. So
Okay.
I mean, the content's going to be rolling in. Springtime, we'll probably transfer over to maybe some outdoor recreation, hiking, camping, kayaking, fishing, specifically in the spring, and then for our summer recreation, we hopefully be out on the water a lot more as well. So
Yeah, and I mean some of a lot of these topics overlap, right? Like camping and fishing season overlap. Fishing and property management and spring turkey season overlap. So it excuse me.
yeah,
Um,
as much as we can, we're going to be looking to kind of dive into a little bit. One week we're doing one thing, one week we're doing something else. So there should be a good diverse content
Yeah, and
list
quite
for people.
frankly, if we get into a situation where we're like diving deep into like overlapping topics, I mean, there's nothing to say that we can't release 2 episodes a week, one here, one on YouTube, or both here, or whatever the case is. So that's jumping quite a bit ahead.
Yeah,
And
and
I think we had
and
read.
because you mentioned it, we are going to start having our episodes on YouTube. So if you're hearing this episode, this probably will be our second episode that will be uploaded straight to YouTube um, the day after that we air it on the Sportsman's Empire Podcast Network.
Yeah, and the one from last week was the first one.
Yeah,
The Brian
the
episode is
Brian
the very
episode.
first episode. Definitely going to post audio. We just got to make sure that the video is coming through clearly. We hope to post the video, but for sure we're going to be posting the audio there. Now, with that being said, I mean, you pretty much segued into the next topic, so let's just
Yeah, I
let's
mean,
just get on with it.
before
I
we
mean,
talk about the pre-rut, why don't you just talk about like this past week or so that you've been hunting in PA, now that you've kind of settled down a little bit. You did a lot of New York hunting on your property. Um, how did any hunts that you had in PA go?
So I don't want to say that they're unsuccessful hunts because I've talked about it before. I think any hunt where you gain some kind of knowledge, whether it's I need to do this more often or I need to stop doing this, I think at that point every hunt is successful.
Yeah, and
But
these have
outside
been
of
like your
that,
first two hunts in Pennsylvania, right? Like you hadn't even
ye
actually hunted Pennsylvania till now. You just moved there.
so this is my first deer season in Pennsylvania. I've hunted birds before, and I just put my third sit in yesterday. Yesterday was October 28th. Um, it's turning out to be a little tougher than I expected, but I also think now after talking to you today, listening to a podcast today, I think I've gotten everything mixed up. I've been trying to use like pre-rut mid-season tactics, early season. I think I've just been kind of turned around. I think it's a little bit of the pressure trying to build a channel and a network and trying to get that success on camera, but I also think it's me myself, like we're just talking about wanting to put meat in the freezer for health reasons, for family reasons, and I haven't been able to do that, and now my time is limited, and it's just I've been getting a little frustrated, and you and I were talking about this earlier. And I try to take a step back and kind of not convince myself, because I don't think I need convincing. I just need to remind myself that I'm changing things this year. It's a new place, no cameras, no food. I'm pretty much doing in hunt scouting, basically. Like I'm hunting to scout rather than scouting to hunt, if that makes sense. But in the last couple weeks, I have found really, really, really great sign. I found like 100-yard stretch where there's rubs every 10 feet. Not even exaggerating. Some new, some old, some from that day, some from the day before. And yesterday, I hunted a clear cut for the very first time, and I didn't see any action in daylight. But literally, just when it got too dark to see without a flashlight, I was strapping up all my gear at the base of a tree, and I had some deer come through after I had been calling all afternoon. So that tells me that I'm close. I'm in a good spot. There's deer there, and the calling I'm doing isn't scaring deer away. So I pulled some successes out of yesterday, along with it being my quickest setup ever. I think it was the best sit of the year as far as Pennsylvania is concerned. So with that said, I'm looking forward to the pre-rut. I'm excited to try some of these tactics out in the proper time of year, and we'll talk about what those tactics look like in just a little bit. So what is your last week and a half look like?
Yeah, so my last week is, I've been on this property that I've talked about multiple times where we know that there's a couple nice deer. We just haven't been able to show we did see one of our target bucks on the hoof in daylight hours during the hunting season a couple weeks ago, and we ended up pinpointing an area where we know that they do travel to. Um, we have, between me and the other people that are hunting that property, I think that we put a lot of pressure on the property. Um, between the two does that I had earlier in the season and then the 7 pointer that I had shot, the three deer that the guy that I'm hunting with, the all does he shot, I think the deer are hip to the trick. I think they know what's going on. So it's been a little bit frustrating in trying to locate some of these mature bucks over the next couple weeks. That being said, this past Saturday, I did have another on the hoof during daylight encounter with one of my target bucks, Road Rash, and he won. He just beat me. He knew that something was up. I don't know if he caught my wind. I don't know if he was coming to some of the calling that I was doing, and maybe he just kind of stood on the end of the open area where he thought that the noise had been coming from, and he was hoping that he'd be able to smell the deer that had been making that noise, and he just didn't see anything and he didn't smell anything, so he just said, I'm gonna go where I really want to go now. But basically he came to about 10 yards of where I was hunting, stopped, and just was smelling for probably 10 minutes. Low, high, left, right. I mean, just smelling, smelling, smelling. And I'm having trouble figuring it out. I feel like if he would have smelt me, he might have done something different. Like a lot of times they'll blow their nose and make that blow noise. They might not run away, but they'll at least just make that noise, or they'll stomp their foot trying to get whatever they think is out there to move to try to kind of give yourself up. And he didn't do that. I wish I was able to get him on camera because of the way, if anyone was able to see our YouTube video of the 7 pointer I shot, go to the YouTube channel on Wing and Tail Outdoors. It's the most recent episode that had just been posted, is
17, I think it was episode 17.
the episode of me harvesting the 7 pointer. You'll know that he came in on my weak side, came down a trail, and he came to literally 1 inch past where I needed him to get to. And I mean, it was last light. There was minutes left in shooting light, and he was able to just get there. If I would have waited a little bit more time, who knows, he could have spooked as well. So this deer followed that same path on my weak side. I had to turn my back to my tree, wait for him to present himself, and he just never did. So,
Were you
um,
in the same tree? The
same
same
exact
tree that
tree, which I almost never do.
never
There's
do,
just
yeah.
never, there's just not anywhere else to sit there though.
Now is
It's
this the tree
that.
you put your hang on in, or were
No,
you
no,
just
no.
saddle
So the
hunting out of
hang
the
on
same
that I'm
tree?
in, where's the original stand that I had saw Road Rash during daylight, which was, to call it daylight was a joke. It was basically last light, but it was a hang on across the creek. So I would have had to lob an arrow over there to get to him. But again, he caught me off guard. I didn't expect him to come from that area that time of day. I wasn't really hunting the side that he was on. I just happened to hear him and I looked over and saw him. Since
So
then, I've gone over the creek and I've gone into what I've been calling the buck nest, but there's literally one tree that I can hunt. And it's not even, it's a gnarly tree, huge base. It's got three trunks that split up out of this one big, larger, massive trunk at the bottom. I've got to basically like climb into the first three trunks from the ground and then start setting up my sticks. Like it's a weird setup.
can you can what it sounds like happened is it sounds like he got to a point where something didn't look right or feel right, and he stopped in a place waiting for either the wind or the thermals to change direction. Because at that time of the night, like, the last half hour of daylight, first half hour of daylight, those thermals are going to switch from rising to dropping or from dropping to rising. And did he come between you and the water?
He never got between me and the water if you're making a direct 90-degree perpendicular line from my tree to the water. He was
Was the
about,
water
so if
running
you're
from?
thinking of a clock,
Mhm.
north being my 12 o'clock, the wind was coming northwest, so wind was coming probably from 10 or 11 o'clock down to 5 or 6 or 4 or 5, whatever.
Mhm.
He was standing at 1 o'clock. So the wind should have, in all theory, been great. So
Okay.
the thing is, as it started to set, I think there was a little bit more west. I could have gotten a little bit of ricocheting
Or
off of.
even just
It
one
doesn't
off
matter.
directional
I even
gust.
said,
Yeah.
I mean, I've been overthinking it so much. I mean, at this point, it's is what it is. But I said to my wife, I'd been eating sunflower seeds in the tree the whole day, and I've been spitting the sunflower seeds out onto the floor. I said, I wonder even if he even just smelt that, just because that was more towards the ground. Like you never know. You
You
overthink
know
it
what's
like it's straight.
funny? I've literally been considering bringing sunflower seeds into my tree with me just because, like, I need something to do. At all times of the day, I need something to do. And if I had seeds, I think that would help out.
Why didn't I just bring
I
you
don't,
a 5 pound bag of seeds?
yeah, and they're unsalted.
They're
Yeah.
unsalted. They're unflavored. They're unflavored. It's
Unflavored,
probably trash.
unsalted,
It's probably
just
trash.
honestly, I'm not gonna lie, they're cooked in peanut oil, which is why you gave them to me in the first
Oh
place, but
yeah,
like
that's a whole nother
they're
conversation.
they're sunflower seeds that taste like peanuts. I mean, and I love peanuts. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
like
fine.
the,
Yeah, it was
it's
just
just
the oils. I was
best of both
trying to.
worlds.
So I just a quick little thing. I'm obsessed with sunflower seeds. I love sunflower seeds. I'm actually a nail biter, which I know you are as well. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not really a great thing, and I've been trying to get away from it. So sunflower seeds has been something that helps me, but it's the flavoring that is it's just too much. So I was looking for like an organically sourced, unsalted, roasted seed sunflower seed that I could still get the oral fixation, crack them, but then I can eat as many as I want. I don't have to worry about like getting a salty version and then it's like my tongue gets chapped or eating like a artificially flavored whatever. So that's where that
Yeah,
comes from. Anyway.
I got you. So kind of getting back on track with our topic here, we want to talk about the pre-rut. And a lot of why I think I haven't had success now is because, like I said a few minutes ago, a lot of the strategies or the tactics I'm using, I've been trying to use so far, I needed to be using now. Like I said, today is October 29th. I think like this past weekend, it's Tuesday today. So I think from 3 days ago on is when I should be using the tactics I've been using. What do these tactics look like? I've been trying to hunt terrain features. I've been trying to hunt the lower side of slopes where doe are going to be bedded and feeding up top, and the bucks are going to be sending the doe down low. I've been trying to hunt um, clear cuts and thickets, which honestly those can be good all year. But like last night, I thought the deer were going to be coming out of the thicket. They ended up going into the thicket after dark, which I never even considered even being a possibility. Um, I've been hunting trails. I've been hunting old sign. I've been hunting a lot of things that in my mind should have worked. But again, now that we're talking about it, I really think I just got ahead of myself. I think, like you've been saying, you've been driving yourself crazy overthinking. I think I've spent the last 6 months overthinking what my hunting season is going to look like. and I just got ahead of myself. Instead of, I probably honestly should have focused on New Jersey for the first 4 weeks of the season. I probably never should have thrown a sit at New York, except for that first sit when I thought we were going to get a shot at Post, which we ended up getting. My dad got a shot at him. But once we got that shot at him, I should have wiped my hands clean and I should have focused on Jersey while I still had that license and while I could still target doe. Um, and honestly, I probably should have hunted feed trees more. I should have been more focused on the food, bedding to water, bedding to food, and vice versa. So moving into the pre-rut, I think actually I have found some pretty decent spots, and in my hunting incorrectly, I think I've actually done some pretty decent scouting for the pre-rut. I've called in a couple young bucks with some tending grunts, which has worked really well. My rattling hasn't scared any deer off. I haven't heard any deer like head for the hills when I'm rattling or calling, so that's a huge plus for me. And I think I've really gotten into some rut funnels. I found some great waterways that run, one side of the waterway is really thick cover, the other side is just a massive, vast oak forest, So I think spots like that I've been trying to hunt early, as long as my pressure didn't push these deer off, I think those are the spots I'm going to be hitting coming up here in the next couple of weeks, and I think that's what I'm going to be focusing on. What do you got going on?
Yeah, that's
What are
good.
you
So,
looking for the pre-rut?
I've was able to get a couple more sits in, and I've been hunting the same location, so I've been able to kind of take a little bit of an inventory of the animals that are on the property. Even though I may not have been seeing every single animal on the property every time I hunt, I have been seeing some of the same usual characters on different parts of the property at different times of the season, at different times in the day. And I've kind of started to be able to put together a little bit of what's going on there. And, as far as the pre-rut goes, I personally have not seen anything that has made me think that the pre-rut has started. Now, that doesn't mean that it hasn't. Obviously, there's different conditions in different states, so, you know, there's going to be different conditions for other people. One of the things that I'll say, if you're listening to the podcast and you're trying to tell yourself, well, how do I know if I'm a weekend hunter? I only get Saturdays, maybe Sundays to hunt. Now I've got Monday through Friday where I'm not in the woods, not able to see what's going on. If if it starts on Monday, a day after I stop hunting, now a whole week's gone by before I can get into the woods again where rutting conditions have started. One little thing I always have looked at, and I don't know that no one's doing it. It's just something that I've always done. Is it, if I'm traveling, a lot of times I work. In my past, I've done a lot of construction. I've done a lot of work where I'm traveling through the state on a lot of highways. When I start to see more dead bucks on the highways, I'm saying things are picking up.
Or
So,
even or
you
even
know,
the doe, because the bucks are chasing the
yeah,
doe across the
exactly.
street. They're
But
getting hit.
specifically the bucks too, because especially on the highways, you'll see does on the highways all the time. A lot of times you don't really see the bucks that close to the road, except for young ones. But when I start to see a little bit better quality deer on the highways, and one-off deer you'll notice. But if you're driving the same highways every day, and you see one deer, you could probably ignore it. But once you start to see like two, three, they're probably moving. So that's just one little kind of thing you might be able to use. But the groups of does that I've been seeing, none of them have been being followed by does. None of the young bucks that I've seen have split up out of their groups. A lot of times when the pre-rut happens, a lot of these young groups of bucks, right? Like your 1.5 year olds, your 2.5 year olds, and sometimes your 3.5 year olds. If they're not really like the main guy on campus, a lot of times they'll hang out in like a 2 or 3 buck group. Once the pre-rut starts, they'll split up. And a lot of times when I see the deer now in the woods, and I'm not saying a lot of times, just in the last couple of days specifically, I've still seen those small groups of younger bucks together. So those are just things I look for, and those are the things that I've seen. And again, we're here in northern New Jersey. That doesn't mean that in other states that it's not happening. That being said, I do anticipate within the next week we should have those conditions.
Yeah. Now, my question for you is, and I'm gonna follow this up with something. What percentage of the trees would you say have no leaves left? Would you say 50% of the leaves are gone, 80% of the leaves are gone,
I mean, the
roughly in
ones
the areas you're
closer to the
hunting?
water. I think still have some of their leaves. I would say 75% of the trees are completely bare. And I would say out of the trees that do have leaves on that are going to be losing their leaves, about 60% of their leaves are gone.
Okay. So the
So I
reason I
mean
asked,
we're
oh,
like
sorry.
we're really close to being like no leaves left.
Yeah. So we spoke in the past. I don't remember what episode it was on, but one of the key indicators that I feel really triggers deer to change up their pattern is the fact that the leaves are falling off. They have less natural cover. They have to go and find the thicker cover, the stemmy cover and stuff like that. Our property in New York, other than the beech trees, which pretty much hold their leaves through the winter, they change colors, they die, but the leaves don't fall off as easy as, say, maple trees or ash leaves or whatever. Other than the beech trees, just about 100% of the trees have no leaves left, and we're seeing pre-rutting activity starting to ramp up. Some of the younger bucks are chasing doe and tending grunts, grunting like crazy. Here in Pennsylvania, it's not quite as empty, but we're pretty damn close. I would say we're at about 85, 90% of the trees have no leaves left on them. And I have a buddy who hunts about 20 minutes east, 20 minutes east of me where I live. And he was out hunting yesterday, had a doe come through, and had a buck. His exact words were glued to her like a fly trap. So, and I should also say, like where we are in PA, we're 10 degrees colder than where I work, which is just 40 minutes southeast. So we are up in the mountains. They are colder conditions. They're relatively similar to the conditions we have in New York. So
And I'm
I
in
would say,
lowlands, like flat swamp,
right.
really wet.
So I would venture to guess that, and this actually works in my benefit, our benefit moving forward as we start to build this team here. We can stagger our pre-rut and our rut hunts because New York comes in first, where I live up here in PA comes in next, New Jersey comes in next, and I think they're about a week and a half behind each other. So I think New York starts first, about a week and a half later, PA starts to ramp up, and then a week and a half Jersey starts to ramp up. So I think you're spot on. I think in the next week, maybe even less, you're going to start to see these
Yeah,
deer
I mean
feel it out.
you can almost guarantee without seeing anything that by the end of the first week of November, it's probably on. And you might
Yeah.
not get deer to just start sprinting to you the second you make a grunt call, but they're gonna be doing rutting activities. Every single deer's got its own personality. I will always say that. It doesn't matter um, what anyone says. I think a lot of people know that to be true already. A lot of scientific studies have shown that different deer are going to do different things. They don't always do the same thing. Sometimes you'll see as you're driving on the highway, like I've already said, you'll see deer feeding out on the side of the road. Some of them are bedded down, some of them are feeding. You know what I mean? Some of them are doing things that others aren't, and that goes the
Yeah.
same thing in the rut. There's going to be mature does that know that they want to breed early because they want to make sure that they're able to have their fawn early on so that they can have the fawns born when they're done breastfeeding, I guess you call it, or I don't know if there's something different you call it when an animal is being breastfed. But they want to make sure that when they're done being breastfed, that the the small green up that's happening is the young plants have the most nutrition for them. They want their babies to be able to have that. So a lot of the mature does sometimes they will get bred early, knowing or later depending on the conditions. The does they have a sense for that, I think. They know
Yeah.
when to be bred, and it doesn't have to do with leaves or temperature. It has to do with just I think maybe a certain moon phase around this time of the year might kick it off for them. There
So,
might be a study better to describe what I'm saying, but I
yeah.
know that there's mature does will know there's a certain time to be bred so that they can time when they have their offspring to coincide with some of the better conditions in the spring.
Yeah. Now, you and I, we have consumed a lot of content, material, information from Dr. Grant Woods. And one of the things he said basically is that The moon, the weather, the food, the time, nothing dictates when a doe is going to come into heat except Mother Nature. Because they, basically speaking, just like a dog, right? A dog comes into heat twice a year, and they're going to come into heat relatively around the same time every year. So the same thing kind of happens with deer because over history, survival of the fittest, Darwinism, Darwin's theory of whatever, survival of the fittest is basically deer over time that have been too early, have been born too early, they die because there's still frost and there's not enough food. Never mind there not being enough food for the fawn to eat. There's not enough food for the mother to eat, for the doe to eat, to create the milk for her fawns. And if they're born too late, they have the food and they have the milk, but the problem is they're still too young to be pushed off on their own come hunting season, and they end up, dying or whatever from predation. So the best, hands down, without a doubt, the best way to figure out a general time frame for your rut is to start making note every year of when you start to see your new fawns showing up. Maybe doe one has her fawns, on this date, and doe two has her fawns on this date, and doe three has her fawns on this date. If you collect this data and you kind of come up with, you have to backtrack 201 days. A deer's gestation period is 201 days. So from the day of conception to the day the fawn is born, it's roughly 201 days. So if you start to collect data on when fawns start to show up on your camera, backtrack 200 days, keep track of all of the fawns you see, all of the new fawns you see, and if all of those fawns start to kind of join up or congregate around a specific week, well, that's the week you need to be in the woods because, well, never mind that. That's not the week you need to be in the woods. That's the lockdown phase. When the deer are being bred, that's the lockdown phase. Backtrack 2 weeks. Those are the 2 weeks you need to be in the woods. So basically, figure out an average date that fawns start to drop, backtrack 2 weeks, and that's when you should really, really, really start your pre-rut sequence, scenario, tactics, however you want to put it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things out there that are going to dictate a lot of different things, and there's always things that we can do to prepare ourselves. So if you're a land manager and that's, something that you're trying to do is get a better understanding of your deer population, you're going to use your cell cameras, you're going to use a lot of these tactics to get a better inventory, get a better understanding of your land. That doesn't mean that people can't treat their public property like their own private land.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing to say that you can't go out there and put cameras out and get information about the deer in your property. You just know that you have a lot more competition.
Quite frankly, I
Unfortunately,
wish
there
I would have done that this year
yeah.
because
I mean,
I'm hunting
listen,
no cameras.
a lot of people are working on restricted time limits, you know what I mean? We have
Yeah,
to make time to do these things and, that's why we're hoping to bring content to people to help them, kind of minimize a little bit of their learning curve and kind of help them in their downtime listening to us, listening to other people. They can educate themselves so that when they do spend the time in the woods, they're maximizing what they're doing. But but yeah, for the people hunting public land, like treat that is your land, right? That is your land to go and do it as you please. Obviously, you have to do it within a certain amount of rules and regulations. You have to abide by um, the different laws of those zones, whether, you're allowed to hunt certain animals at a point restriction or the amount of deer you're able to take off that property. And then obviously the last thing is obviously the other hunters you have to contend with. But I mean, we have no choice other than to live with those constraints. So just stop worrying about that and just do what you can do. Control what you can control,
yeah,
and focus on the things that you have at your disposal. Maybe you're the person that's willing to go the extra mile, spend the extra time, spend the extra effort doing those things, and then you'll be the one with the best advantage. Now, that's not to say that the guy who just goes in with a Walmart bow with a couple arrows he ordered on Amazon doesn't go in there on his first hunt and just, luckily shoots your target buck. It is what it is. We have to live with some of the results sometimes.
yeah.
So,
Now for me this year, the cool thing, it's cool and it's frustrating all at the same time, kind of like I mentioned earlier, is that this is the first time I'm hunting PA. It's the first time I'm targeting deer here in Pennsylvania. I don't know the woods here. I don't have any friends to link up with and to, show me some quality public land. I'm doing it all on my own. So, like for example, the woods that we grew up in Jersey, I could probably go to three different spots right now and say, all right, between these three spots, I'm gonna shoot a deer this year, without a doubt. I truly, genuinely believe that. I'm not saying a mature deer. I'm not saying a huge buck, but I could go into those woods and chances are I could shoot myself a deer. This year, I kind of have to spread myself out. And I know the general consensus is you want to stay in one patch of woods, study it, scout it, learn it, sit in different spots in the same patch and kind of try to figure it out. My biggest problem is the way these areas line up or lay out where I'm hunting is an area that's good for an east wind isn't good for a west wind, simply based on where I think the deer are. So what I find myself doing this year, instead of bringing myself in and focusing on say 100 acres, I'm going from this patch of woods to that patch of woods to that patch of woods, and I'm kind of bouncing around. I don't know if it's to my own detriment, but I think, in my opinion, especially since I'm not using cameras, I think that's the only way that I'm going to start to separate these areas and this spot A, B, and C can go into the quality section. I'm going to keep hunting that in years to come. But spots D, E, and F, I didn't really see anything. I didn't like what I saw on my sits, so we're going to cross those off. We're not going to return to them. I think I need to get those sits out, and I need to just collect the data. I think I need to start building
Yeah, and
that
for people that are
Rolodex.
using, cameras on public land, I mean, a lot of, for me, I've had the experience of people messing with my equipment, stealing my equipment, stuff like that. So it's not fun to have that happen. It's also not fun to have to be the person to have to go out and spend extra money on security stuff and whatever else, and even that's not 100%. So, if you're going to be in the woods, like you said, you're going to be frequenting the areas, using cameras is something that we should be doing because, we just had a friend of ours who's in Wing and Tail Outdoors, John, who's going to be hunting in New Hampshire. He's, rekindled his flame for hunting and he's kind of started to get
In a
back in the
big
woods.
way, in a
Yeah, and
real big
and
way.
he started using cameras, and you got that one picture of that one buck, and now he's in full. You know what I mean? So, at the very least, using cameras can just help you kind of get a bit of an inventory. Now for me, one of the things that I don't want to do is I don't want to go walking through the woods, put out 10 cameras, and now I've spread my scent everywhere, and you know how I am with scent and wind and all that other stuff. I have the ability to kind of know a little bit more about the properties I'm hunting at this moment, but there is something to be said about knowing what's there. Because even if you do spread your scent, and even if you do spook the deer, he's not going to disappear into thin air. He's still
No.
there. You just got to go find him. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then you can use your woodsmanship. You can use your knowledge that you've gained throughout the years on hunting animals. And now you can use also the information of where you saw him, at what time, what were the conditions, and you can put all that information together and you can figure out a new plan to go find him wherever he is. But at the very least, you know that there's something worth hunting.
Sure. Unless you're like us, where you have a shot at your target buck, you don't get you don't get him, and he literally just disappears for good. Yeah.
Again,
He's
you
not
have
he's
to live
not
with the
dead.
results. We
Yeah.
can't, this season is going to have other ups and downs that are still going to come with it. You're just going to have to wait until the next up, and then, there's always next season, at the very
Yeah, I
least.
mean the upside is we have confirmation that he's still alive. Our neighbors have shared pictures of him, so he is still alive. He is still in the area. He is still spreading his seed, So hopefully, if hopefully we get another shot at him. If we don't, hopefully our good friend, our neighbor, gets a shot at him, and hopefully he spreads his seed a little bit and kind of can pass on. It's not the genetics for size, but some of those antler characteristics that come from the male in the breeding, because his, never mind the size, he's a big deer, but his rack in general is just beautiful with those crab claws and the way his brow tines kind of hook in or out. I forget what direction, but absolutely love that. Now, we kind of set a goal for ourselves here. We wanted to keep this podcast under an hour today, and we're just about there. We're at about 50 minutes. And I want to wrap it up by asking you a question and then having you ask me the same question. But before I share that, I want to share, before I ask it, I want to share a fact that I just heard from someone who guides on public land in Pennsylvania. I thought this was really cool, and I think you're really going to enjoy this. As we know, deer get a majority of their water from green leafy browse. I think it's something in the realm of like 80 to 90% of their daily water intake comes from the green leaves of what they're eating, which is why you also like to hunt early season. It's hot, it's humid, deer want water, they want to be by the water, right? However, this guy says in all of his hunting, what he has noticed is that deer actually drink, physically go to water to drink most during the rut because there is no more green leafy browse for them to eat. So now, knowing that little bit of information, and if you want to throw the question back my way so you can think on it a little bit first, that's cool. But if I were to tell you, if I were to tell you right now, you have to pick one strategy, one tactic to use on every single hunt from now until the end of the rut. What strategy are you going with and why?
Well, for you to put that out there, knowing who I am and knowing how I hunt, it's almost unfair to say during the rut because let's just take everything else that I know and I've said out the window for now and just go off of the information you said. If you said that most of the time they go to water is during the rut, then obviously it would be beneficial for me going forward during the rut to hunt near water. That being said, I always hunt near water. And a lot of times I hunt near water early season, which is something you kind of alluded to there. Even though I know that they get a lot of their water from green leafy browse, it is my belief from what I've observed that even though they only get 20% of their water during the early season from actual water and the other 80% is from green leafy browse, I am under the impression that most of the time they're going to get water is right after they bed down and right before they bed down. And a lot of times when they're going to be on their feet, where I'm going to see them during daylight, is right after they bed down and right before they bed down. So for me, even though everything that you just said is true, I still see a lot of deer moving and traversing through scent checking and drinking water very early season, mid season, late season. Deer, just like everything else, needs water. And a lot of the thermals can be pulled through by water currents. Um, a lot of times, a lot of easier travel corridors can be next to water because if you're in a place where there's thick vegetation, a lot of times there's banks that allow them to travel pretty easily. And then if there's a threat, they can just jump up into the thicker vegetation. Um, and then again, the need to drink. So, for me, I'm always hunting near water anytime that I can. If there's a water crossing or something that I think is beneficial and water's involved, you can bet your bottom dollar that that's going to be one of my high priority stands.
I mean, especially this, like now. I mean, we have been in just a ridiculous drought here in the Northeast.
Yeah.
I heard recently that it is one of the driest months in history, which is insane. I mean, we've had a standing forest fire warning for the last week and a half, 2 weeks. I've never seen anything like it. I'm even afraid to go outside. Obviously, we're not having a fire, but something even as simple as starting my thermocell or dropping my flashlight or anything that's hot. Like I'm nervous about that. But that could also heighten the successes found near water. Now, for me, I guess in a way, now I don't know if this is kind of an unfair answer, but I'm going to say that I'm looking to hunt compounding terrain features this year. That's kind of like the main thing that I'm focusing on. For those of you listening who don't know what compounding terrain features are, it's essentially an area where more than one terrain feature come together. So, for example, maybe you have a finger coming down off the point from a ridge, and across that comes a bench, and then as it comes around, they both drain, funnel down into a drainage. And at the bottom of the drainage, maybe there's water. So right in there alone, there's four compounding terrain features. Now maybe on that bench or at the very, very top there, you have an acorn flat. Now that's another terrain feature that is going to help you. Specifically where I am here in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of pines with water running through them. So finding that thicker cover in there, again, another terrain feature is going to help. Now, specifically, especially being that this is a new area and I'm pretty much scouting first and then kind of just going in, walking those spots and finding the sign within the general areas that I've scouted. I will not go to a spot this year that isn't some kind of slope. I'm not hunting a single flatland area this year. It's just not, I don't think it's beneficial for me right now. Um, I'm hunting, in order for me to go scout a spot and hunt it, it needs to be a ridge with at least two bold lines on the topographic map. One high, one low. Depending on the wind and the strength, I might hunt high, I might hunt low. That's a conversation for another day. There needs to be an oak flat or some kind of food source up top. And preferably speaking, if there's two different fingers or like a saddle that kind of comes down into that ridge, those are the types of places that I'm hunting this year. So I guess if I needed to give it one word, it would be compound terrain features. But the reason I'm doing that is because I think the doe are going to be feeding up top. This time of year, the bucks are transitioning their focus from food cover water to doe, 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 doe. They're trying to find the hot doe. They're running, they're searching, they're cruising, and they're going to maximize their energy until they locate that doe and they start to expel that energy on her. So what I feel they're going to do is they're going to go to places where they have thermals or scent pulling down from multiple areas and they can kind of scent check multiple different areas where doe hang out from one spot. Now, if I find a spot that has water in it that has all that, I'll probably go and sit on the water. But overall, that's what I'm looking to do. That's kind of the main tactic that I'm going to be attacking with this year. You're muted.
Sorry. The area that I'm hunting is very flat. There's really no mountains at all, and there's a lot of little creeks and little small little dry creek beds, and they're spidering back and forth. So my tactic is really just going to be kind of, kind of hanging out near a lot of those little funnels and pinch points. And I've been seeing a lot of sign in those areas, so I'm hoping that the deer just continue to do what they're doing. They just start to do it a little bit earlier in the day. They just start doing it in daylight, and that's just something I'm hoping that the movement will pick up, and then we'll start to see a little bit better caliber deer. I haven't been doing anything to entice them to come to my location. I've been kind of getting them just to let them walk around naturally throughout the woods so that they can kind of calm down. Again, like I said, we've put a little bit of pressure on the property from having harvested the amount of deer that we have so far. So I'm hoping that they can kind of just settle down and then they'll start to present themselves. One little quick tip that I will give to people if they are kind of going into new areas, we did talk about the fact that leaves had fallen off the trees, and pretty much all of them had fallen. Um, I touch on it in my next YouTube video that will be coming out shortly. But one of the things that I'll tell you is if you're going to be doing any prep or scouting or anything inside the hunt, or even just if you want to, you're going to hunt the stand multiple times, take a rake with you. Go to your stand, set up your stand, do what you got to do on your way out, whether it's, during the hunt that you've had already or whether it's during a scouting session. Take a rake with you, and then as you're leaving your setup, you can take the rake, and you don't have to go crazy, but just kind of brush some of the leaves that are in the way on the walking trail to your spot. It's not something that's going to do too much damage to the natural surroundings of the woods, but it'll give you a little bit quieter entry. So again, it's just something that I've experienced, something that I've done in the past. It's something that I like to do. It's just a little thing. Obviously, if you're walking 3 miles in, it's probably not worth it. But, if you got a short little walk on a spot that you think might be something productive, again, just take a rake with you. Rake some of the leaves out on your walking trail in and out because, when you have days where there's a lot of wind or maybe you finally do get a little bit of rain, it might soften things up and quiet quiet, but on those still days, those still dry days with like no wind, I mean, the deer are going to hear you coming a mile away. So just one last little tidbit there as we wrap up.
Yeah, I mean, last night I had that. I mean, I went out, I sat maybe 2.5 hours after work yesterday, and knowing how dry everything was, I took my first two steps in the woods and I was like, well, 0% chance of me being quiet, so I might as well make it quick. And I stopped giving a shit about like creeping and being stealthy, and I just beelined it to the area where I knew I wanted to go. And then once I got there, I kind of slowed down as I was looking for scent. But on my trek like to the general area, I just let me get there.
Yeah.
I'm running low on time. That's that. So, um, I think we covered some great stuff today. I mean, we touched on Brian. I think he was a great guest. I mean, I really loved his story, and I loved it. We're very thankful that he shared it with us, and we got some insight out of it. And hopefully, moving forward, we can work with him. I wanted to plug him again, and I forgot to do it earlier. So, his Instagram, you can find him with his production Instagram at timber_life_outdoors. That's Timber Life Outdoors. He's getting started with a YouTube channel coming up soon too. So definitely check him out. Hopefully we can collaborate in the future and kind of work on some stuff with him. With that being said, any last minute things you want to add in for the pre-rut?
Nah, just get out there. Get out there and experience the wild.
Awesome. And my last little bit of information is don't be afraid to try something new. This is the time of year where you can start getting away with a little bit more. The deer are starting to focus more on breeding. They care a little bit less. Not that they don't care as much, but they stop focusing so much or using their instincts, I guess you can say. You can get away with a little bit more noise. You can get away with a little bit more movement. They're a little bit less alert to their surroundings, from what I've seen, especially when it comes to calling. I'm a huge proponent of calling. I call every 5 to 15 minutes, depending on the day, and sometimes I forget. But as far like that's what my grunt call, my rattling, I'm very particular with. And maybe in the next episode we can kind of give like an example of what the grunting sounds like and what the rattling sounds like. But my takeaway is don't be afraid to try something new. The worst thing that's going to happen is a deer is going to run away, but you're going to learn what not to do next time. So get out there, try new stuff, continue doing what works, figure out what doesn't work, and little by little, you're going to start to build a repertoire of your own of things that work for you, and you're going to find a hunting style that finds you success. So with that being said, we want to thank you so much for joining us here for another episode of Wing and Tail Outdoors. As always, if you like what you heard today, if you found some value in what you heard today, please take 30 seconds, leave us a little review down below. If you're on Apple Podcast, 5-star written review. It really goes a long way for us. And if you're on Spotify, just a good old 5-star review, clicky, clicky. That'll do a great job for us as well. Until next time, have a great day. God bless, and remember, success is just a commitment away.
Peace.
Catch you later.